Hi, and welcome to another live stream with Adobe. Tonight we are talking to three amazingly talented editors who have recently transitioned from being assistants. So I'm going to start off by introducing each one of them so that you can get a little bit of understanding of their backgrounds. Just a reminder to everyone watching the live stream, if you have questions at any point, feel free to leave your question in the comments and you get the chance to have your question answered live. So first we're going to start with Ernie Gilbert. Ernie is a director-editor based in Los Angeles. He's directed music videos for Bayside, Sullivan, Hands Like Houses, Attila, Let Live, I the Mighty, A Skylit Drive, We Came as Romans, and many others. You make me feel super unhip, by the way, because I don't know.
What's great is those are all like older bands now at this point.
All right, see, even less.
Yeah.
His documentary work with Under Oath, Bayside, and Sullivan has been distributed internationally and earned him recognition at Full Frame Documentary Festival in Durham, North Carolina. He has also cut music videos directed by Hiro Murai, including Childish Gambino's This Is America. Ernie worked as an assistant editor on Atlanta seasons 1 and 2, an expert in buffalo wings. Ernie also loves to tell stories, create things, and hang out with his English bulldog, Zoe. Welcome, Ernie.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Next, we have Meagan Wilbur. She is a primetime Emmy-nominated editor, best known for her work on HBO's Two Dope Queens comedy specials, and on the award-winning feature-length comedy When Jeff Tried to Save the World. She recently edited the award-winning short comedic film Are We Good Parents, which premiered at South by Southwest 2018 and won the 2018 AT&T Shape Festival. During her career, she has worked on a diverse range of projects and genres, from obscure comedy favorites like Wonder Chosen to Henson family favorites like Sesame Street. My son's favorite show, so. Meagan discovered her love of the arts at a young age, growing up as a dancer in training at Boston Ballet School and later joining the Run Crew in her local community theater. As part of her ongoing commitment to mentoring emerging talent in post-production, Meagan serves as an executive committee member for the Blue Collar Post Collective. She's a proud member of MPEG Local 700 and the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and was recently published in SMPTE's annual journal. Her favorite type of tea is sencha. You guys all mentioned food.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. And Moni Salazar, is a Mexican editor with editing credits including Honey Boy with director Alma Harel, which premiered at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival and was awarded the Special Jury Award for Vision and Craft, and the Los Angeles Emmy Award-winning documentary Montage, Great Film Composers and the Piano with director Ben Proudfoot. Monica has also worked on numerous short films that have been part of Sundance, Cannes Short Films Corner, and many other film festivals. Her portfolio expands to documentaries, music videos, branded content, and trailers. To give back to the post-production community, Monica serves as the vice president of Los Angeles Blue Collar Post Collective, which is an accessible and focused grassroots nonprofit organization that supports emerging talent in post-production. And I know that you guys have some BCPC members watching tonight, so hi guys. Monica takes pride in her taco expertise.
Okay.
And has found the best pastor tacos in Los Angeles. So contact Moni on the side if you want to get those details.
I'll get you to those pastor tacos. And I'll give you a round for those buffalo wings.
Okay.
You guys can trade secrets.
Yeah.
Stay out of this. Okay. So the purpose of tonight's live stream is to talk about assistant editing and then the transition from assisting to editing. One of the things that came up in our prep call for this was just how different assistant editing has become in a digital age, where assistants used to be able to sit in the room with the editors, slicing the film and talking through, and sitting in with the directors, interacting with the editors. So I want to start off talking about how you each got your first assisting job. How did you get in the door as an assistant? We'll start with you.
Okay. I was in North Carolina. I was doing music videos, documentary, traditional music videos, behind the scenes stuff. And a friend of mine, a guy I went to college with, Eric Ellington, was working at a company here in LA in reality television, and he was able to get my foot in the door, and I, was able to prove that I had the necessary skill set and was willing to work the night shift, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. And so that got my foot in the door. And then another friend of mine from college, Eric Turner-Cola, who's also a great editor as well, got me in at, what was the show? Eagle Heart on Adult Swim at Absolutely Productions and Konako Productions. Or actually, it was just Konako Productions a long time ago. Anyways, that was my first scripted show. And then from there, it was just kind of off to the races doing scripted assistant editing.
How about for you?
For me, I had been a runner, edit room assistant in a very small editing house that did mostly advertising. And I had done that for 4 summers. So when I was looking for my first job, I also moved cities. So I had done my, edit room assistant 4 summers in Boston. And when I moved to New York, I thought, oh, this is great. I'm ready to be an assistant editor. Someone hire me. Hello, New York. And instead of moving up, I found that when you change cities, you pretty much are expected to come in at the same level. So I took a job doing pretty much the same thing as a runner front desk person, but again, at a small shop, but they moved me up pretty quickly to dubbing tech and to loader and then to assistant. I think it took about 3 or 4 months of working at that shop. So instead of just being the front desk person, dub tech from 9 to 6, they started having me come back. I was going to class at night, so I started going back in the evenings to be a loader and became an assistant editor there. And they put me on, my very first show was Wonder Chosen with this really great editor named Chris Malone, who let me do a lot of things, like assemble stuff, and that was really cool. And this was all on tape. This was all on tape. And they had these very fancy new 3-chip cameras that they were shooting this on. So it was a lot of ingesting and laying things off the tape and going through archival, and almost entirely at night. So during the day, I was 9 to 6, I was getting them their lunches and kind of hanging out in the room sometime. My editor was really cool about letting me hang out in the room and giving me stuff to do. But then I would come back at night and I would load all the archival stuff, for like the hot dog sequence and stuff like that. So that was my first real assistant editing gig.
So willingness to work the night shift sounds like a strong through line.
Willingness to work 20-hour days will get you very far, and willingness to work for minimum wage will get you your first job.
Yep. And how about you, Moni?
Yeah. I started as an intern for a production company. I actually had a really hard time finding an internship in my time as a student because I was a foreign national student. So it was just really hard for anyone to just even give me an internship. So after I graduated, I started in this Mexican production company in LA, and they had a movie going through post-production and delivery. And I, as an intern, was the only person in the entire company who knew post-production. Even like the associate didn't really know much. So she looked at me and someone told her, like, Moni knows editing and post. And she's like, okay, you talk to eFilm and it's on you now. And I was like, you're leaving your movie to a recent grad. I graduated a month ago. And it was an entire year of proving myself and like doing a lot of like editing for them and small things and here and there. And towards the end of the year, when I decided to be like, you guys call me when you have like a real position. I left for 2 weeks and they were just calling me back like 2 weeks later, like, hey, do you still want a job? Do you want to assist on this movie that we're producing now? And I was like, sure. And that's how I met. So I ended up assisting on a non-union feature for the editor that would become my mentor after putting in that pretty much 9-10 months of effort as an intern with paid side gigs with them, but like it was mostly time as an intern.
And ultimately, your transition to editor came through a strong relationship with
that editor. Yeah.
I remember back when I was working in film that one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, especially about being in the edit bay, is like, be nice to be around. Because you're spending so much time with people that like if you're not pleasant, but like if you're just like begrudgingly doing everything or like everything seems like a chore, that people are like, yeah, I don't really want you around. What are some of the best pieces of advice that you would give people to get asked onto that next job or to get vouched for that next gig?
Well, recently on the internet, the way that advice that you just gave has been rephrased has been do good work and don't be a dick. But that's one way.
Yeah.
My advice that I give to people though is like have a good attitude, do the job you signed up to do, even if it's not the job you want to do. Mm-hmm. Make clear that you would like to edit if that's what you want as an assistant, because some people would like to be career assistants and that's not necessarily what they want. You can make that there's ways to have conversations and make that clear without overstepping the boundaries. Like definitely don't tell the editor how to cut. Mm-hmm. That's a big mistake that a lot of assistants don't quite necessarily understand the politics of the room at first, and learning, when you're invited to give your opinion, give your opinion. When you're invited to collaborate. I was always taught that, assistants should be like seen and not heard, and you're here to learn if the client is in the room. Mm-hmm. When you're alone with your editor, it's, it's different. You can kind of chime in depending on your relationship with them. But like basically anticipating their needs and like doing a good job without complaining, because sometimes your job is bringing the lunch. Sometimes because you brought the lunch, after a couple of weeks they go, oh, all right, cut this sequence and like see how it goes. That's they want to see that you have a good attitude for all of the work. Mm-hmm. And also because you're there to do a job for them, and sometimes that job's not super fun. It's getting lunch, but
I've found that it's a lot of it's taking initiative. Mm-hmm. That there's been people I've worked with who you ask for something and it's like move this pot over there, and they need to ask like 13 people how to do that. Mm-hmm. And there's a person who is like, okay, let me Google how to move the pot. Maybe I have a colleague or mentor who can give me some advice, and then they just do it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something about taking initiative and being that go-getter in the room who, oh, why is this thing acting up in the software? Mm-hmm. How do I do this thing? How does this work? Like, to be a resource, because then you are being nice and being good, but you're also providing a service. You're like, mm-hmm. just making things helpful. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know, I've been very lucky to work on shows where the post team is kind of like a family or just very tight knit. And when everybody is on that same wavelength, you make better stuff. Yeah. It's when everybody's like butting heads and stuff's not working, and then nobody wants to take the initiative, take care of anything, that like you make garbage and then you don't even like what you made, and then it's like, what am I doing? But when you take initiative and you just try things, like being that person, we have so much access to stuff, mm-hmm. whether it's tutorials or resource groups or whatever, like we have so much access to stuff. Be that person who reaches out and gets that stuff.
And for you, Ernie, I know that on Atlanta, when we were first talking to your team, a lot of the questions about like, oh, well, how is After Effects used? And they were like, oh, well, Ernie does all the After Effects stuff. And you're like, how much do you think knowing those extra skills has helped get you the opportunity to do more cutting or be more involved?
I like to say that I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to stuff like After Effects or Photoshop or these other programs or things. But yeah, just knowing enough that you can, there's things that always happen in every show, right? You got to temp in. It's 2019. You have to temp in a fake phone screen, mm-hmm. or a fake TV screen, computer monitor. Like, spend the day, maybe it's your Saturday and that sucks, but like spend the day, figure out how to do that in like a rudimentary way. And then now that's another tool in your skill set that just makes you more valuable. I've found that, again, just being willing to like try and take a stab at stuff and research something to figure out a workflow has paid off. And like, I'd like to think that the editors I work with are very appreciative of that. At least that's the vibe I've gotten.
No, that's what I've heard too. We actually have a question from the live stream. To your point, Monica asks, can you explain how you changed the perception that people have of you as just the assistant editor and convince them to start seeing you as more, or consider you an editor?
So something that I'm very open about all the time is how I am constantly editing. Like if I'm assisting on a project, when I was a post PA for a union movie when I didn't have my union hours, I was I made sure the fridge was stocked and everyone had eaten and coffee was brewing, everything was set. And people would come out of the editor's room and would see me with my editing software, and I would be cutting something, and like my editor comes out and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a post-PA, I cannot work on this movie, so I got my own movie to work on right now, and I hope you don't mind." And he's like, "Huh, we need to get you in the union," kind of thing. Like, so I always made them see me as an editor who happens to be assisting. I always made that a point. Like, I didn't want people to see me as an assistant editor. I always wanted my feedback when people ask for my opinion to always come from a place of storytelling, and to always come from a place of, I have this problem emotionally and I think there's a way to solve it, and I think that this is where the problem is. So I always made sure that I was very articulate, that I was, because even in that show, when I was a post-PA, the director turned to me and was like, "You're an editor." And he told me that, and he was like, don't fall in the trap. Make sure that you're constantly editing. And that was just advice I took to heart. So that's
great advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I give that advice to people too. Very often people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh," I mean, right now, my story is I'm an editor. I'm working as an assistant on a scripted show, and that's advice that I give to people who are trying to transition from PA. That works from PA to assistant, works from assistant to editor, works from editor to director, director to editor, whatever you want, because you are all those things if you were doing that work. And they always say in other industries, they say dress for the job you want. Well, editors dress like this, so I'm already dressed for the job that I want, and but so then it's just a matter of introducing yourself at a party when people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm editing this short film right now," but it's like, what am I doing? Monday through Friday, I'm assisting on the show, and it's great, and I'm having a great time because I like doing both.
That actually speaks to a question from Tessa Schultz on Facebook. She says, "Any advice how to get into editing feature films for someone whose main experience is in commercial or corporate work?" So taking on other projects that aren't necessarily your day job sounds like partially.
Yeah, and if your day job is being an assistant editor on a great show, that's an awesome day job to have while you're saving up money to cut that indie, or maybe you're doing shorts on the weekend. Pretty much everyone I know that's like an assistant editor on large studio features, they're all cutting shorts on the weekend. They're all cutting indie features on the weekend. They're cutting constantly, and that's what they're doing. So they're not just like you said, like everyone's practicing their skills constantly. Sometimes your skills, like one Saturday I'm working on this one thing. Sometimes your skills practices that you're making a whole movie on your weekends.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of it's, I mean, this is the cliche, but it's relationships.
Yeah.
The person you cut the music video for last year, he or she might be directing the feature next year. The person you did this thing for at this point is growing just like you're growing. And so building those relationships, that network of people, I like to say that you just need to be on like 20 people's list. And then when you're on 20 people's list, like you're turning down work. Because each of those 20 people are reaching out, they're booking a commercial, music video, a TV show, whatever, and they'll come to you. And if you're good at what you do and you're nice to be around, you don't even have to be cool, just like not a dick, and they'll want to keep working with you, and word of mouth will spread. And editing is that one thing that's like, it's not super sexy, right? It like everybody's like, I want to be the cameraman, right? Or I want to be the director, or the whatever, but or the actress. But editing is kind of all this. We're in this dark room in Santa Monica, right? And I've found that like everybody's wanting to make stuff more so now than ever, right? Like we can shoot something on our phone right now, like Soderbergh if we want. But everybody wants to make stuff, and so everything needs to be edited. And so it's finding those people that will be your champion and you can work with, and then when they grow, you're going to grow. When they get a new thing, you're going to get a new thing.
The cool thing too is like short form has a much bigger life than it ever has before in terms of platforms where you can actually see music videos or see short films or see short documentaries. That there's like so many ways to see content that we never had before is really exciting.
And I was just gonna add, there's also something to be said about if you are in the commercial world, or if you're in a very different, if you're climbing up a very different ladder, or if your ladder is against the wrong wall, like I heard once in a really good podcast, the ladder you're climbing is against the wrong wall, then there's so many things you can do to put it up against the right one. And that can be, what movies do you like? If you want to be in feature films, what movies do you like? Reach out. Maybe don't reach out to the editor. You can reach out to the editor and make a connection there, but also reach out to those assistants, because eventually that's the first job you want to get, maybe, as an assistant to those for those type of movies. And no one reaches out to the assistant, ever. So just find their email, Twitter.
But they should, because those assistants are going to become editors, and they're going to need assistants of their own.
Yeah.
And if you're putting in your PA hours, and that's as everyone moves up together, like you said. And it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder that you want to climb than halfway up a ladder that you don't want to climb.
So shifting gears a little bit, one topic that is obviously very important to the assistant editor is workflow. For people not as familiar, assistant editors are often the ones who are tasked with, okay, how are we going to set up this workflow? How are we going to set it up correctly so that we're not screwed in the end? How are we, what choices are we going to make at the beginning? So what are your top tips for deciding your workflow on a project?
Test it. I'm sorry, like that. Yeah, you decide a workflow. If it's the first time you're doing it, talk to your sound team. This is the test shoot. Does it connect everything? Just test the workflow with all the main departments. That's my main recommendation.
Ask the people you're delivering to. People get really freaked out about turnovers, and it's like, just ask. They'll have a spec sheet. You can have a conversation about it. It's not a thing set in stone. But usually I work backwards from whatever the deliverable needs to be. I like to plan most things backwards from whatever the goal or the end state is, and then I design backwards from there, communicating with other departments where all the handoffs and turnovers and interdependencies are. And
don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. People get really nervous to ask, the VFX department wants their turnovers. How do I do it? Ask them. It's slightly different sometimes.
Ask questions, communicate early and often. I'd say don't be afraid to call stuff out. I've called stuff out as an assist, why are the dailies looking so dark? Or why are the dailies looking off color? Be that frontline person who's proactive and
trust yourself. Trust yourself to make that call. If the dailies look wrong to you, ask about it.
I've won over favor of DPs because I've discovered dailies were rendered wrong, and they're oh, thank God they're right for the offline, because otherwise everybody's going to fall in love with this ugly green tint or something.
It happens.
I always have I always tell when people call me and they're freaking out about turnovers, I was it's all about how you word things. Don't worry, don't tell them that you don't know how to do this turnover. Just be hey, I'm reaching out I'm just reaching out to see how you guys like things done. Because I have my way of doing things, but how do you like things? And they will tell you how to do it. That's it. You don't have to be oh my God, how do I do it? Just ask them nicely, and they will tell you.
Richard Sanchez gives this great advice. When you start a job as the assistant, if you're the only assistant on the show, you reach out to all the other departments that you'll be working with, the script supervisor, during production, the script soups, and the sound recorder, the people that are sending you notes from set, and then you reach out to the people that you're delivering to, and you just have a conversation.
I know all three of you have worked significantly with Premiere Pro. What are the benefits of setting up a workflow in Premiere? I like that.
Should
I go first? Well, if you're doing something that needs to air, tomorrow, and you're shooting it tonight at 6 p.m., and it's got to be, on the air at 4:30 p.m. the next day, one of the cool things about Premiere is that you don't need to transcode your footage. You can, and it does have, advantages if you're doing large projects, but you don't have to for the quick turn stuff. All of our stuff at Conan would just come right off. We had hard drive recorders that just recorded straight to ProRes, so we could just toss it right into the server and right into Premiere and right into the studio. That's it. Also, the audio finishing is really great. I like audio mixing in Premiere. That's awesome. Those are advantages. You probably want to talk about dynamic link.
I don't know.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, dynamic link is cool. I mean, I just find it's fast, it's intuitive. I'm never thinking about it. It's not getting in the way. And I know there's like a personal preference thing. You know, I learned Final Cut in high school in 2004. When that died, I moved into Premiere, but it's just quick. My music video workflows, I can be from receiving a hard drive to editing in like 15 minutes because, like you said, you just pull it in. I'm just cutting. You know, I throw a LUT on everything, or I do transcodes if I want to deal with that. But it's just quick. And then dynamic link into After Effects. There's small things too, like being able to just I can play stuff back and then go to another window if I'm trying to tag something as an assistant editor, update a cue sheet,
having two timelines.
Two timelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
For music videos, music two timelines or
The multicam.
the proxy to raw for longer, for bigger projects, just clicking on a button so that you can shoot out the full res.
I'm using it on the short that I'm doing right now. It's great. The automatic proxy workflow. It's offline, online, but I don't have to do as much as I used to have to do. That's amazing.
Especially
And
as we're getting into 4K is standard and 8K
Which is
not that
Which is
abnormal
exactly what
anymore.
this short is. Yeah, we had a really quick turnaround for this too. We shot it in 2 days and had to have it to submitted for a deadline for something 6 days later.
Oh my God.
And I was doing it after my day job, Monday through Friday, in the evenings, and then one day Saturday, and we were all right, well, that's a good first rough cut. We didn't transcode anything, But then later, was able to use the proxy workflow to set up a regular offline style edit, how I would normally cut in 1080 and then upres at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to get that cut out the door really quickly, just cutting from the camera originals during that first week, and didn't have to burn any time, doing transcodes and stuff like that, which was really nice. And I had an assistant who put that together for me, which was also really nice.
Yeah, I know you mentioned audio. You've mentioned doing some VFX work. How often are you, as editors, having to do a little bit of color, do a little bit of sound, do a little bit of VFX work?
VFX and comps, I do simple stuff. You do not want me to touch the color in your film, and I'm very honest. I'm very open about that with people. I mean, my friend, because I was editing on this production house that it was solely Premiere, and my friend was like, "Oh, can you just do some temp color correcting on this?" And I was like, "Literally, please be my guest. I'm not good at it, and I will be the first person to admit on it. I'm not the best. I should take a class on it and learn it and be better at it. It hadn't been my first priority, but
there's workflow reasons you
but
never
sound,
prioritize.
Yeah,
you
but
get stuff
sound
from the
is
lab.
I do prioritize
that's
sound,
fair.
and I will make a full sound design and stuff like that, which is really cool. The sound plugins are really cool.
Yeah. When I'm working in broadcast and for you in features, when you get stuff from the lab, they usually burn in a temp color pass already on your dailies.
Yes.
So it kind of depends on what environment I'm working at. At Conan, we did all of our own finishing in Premiere, all of it, all of our own sound and color, and we had a visual effects and graphics department. So for time reasons, it was faster to parallel process those two things.
And assuming they still are.
And I assume that they are still working in that way. But yeah, we did. That was the first show though that I had done all of the finished sound, music, color for all my own pieces. Normally when I'm doing that type of thing, it's as a temp on a side project feature short film that I'm cutting. Normally in broadcast I get stuff from the lab that has the color the temp color pass already done. And the scripted show I'm on now, the lab handles all the color work and basically the whole color pipeline, really, because they're going to do the online as well. But we do the temp sound mix and we do the temp VFX.
I find I do a lot of temp stuff like commercials, I'm in the room with like a couple ad agency people, and they want to try something there.
Yeah.
Because they'll like push color and mix to the end for one day, and so it's like we have to do all the experiments in the room, and Premiere makes that super easy. Like even down to, I just did this Fox Sports promo for a boxing match, and we were they weren't happy with a wardrobe choice. They wanted a jacket to be green instead of blue. And we just did a quick mask in Premiere and did a hue qualifier, and boom.
Wow.
It was a different color, and like it was rough. It should not go to air. It should not have gone to air, but like it was enough that in the flow of the 30-second spot, it wasn't
They can make that decision.
it wasn't bumping that one exec. And so it's like having those options. I mean, I'm a big proponent of like we should not, as editors, take on everything. Like there should be specialists moving forward.
Totally. Yeah.
Like as stuff continues to get more and more cheap and more whatever, like we should not get rid of people, but it is nice to be able to very quickly throw like the essential sound plugin thing, throw like, oh, on the radio, on the phone, outside, let me make that ambience, whatever. And like I can do that with 2 clicks, and I'm not having to remember like, is it the convolution reverb or is it the AU whatever reverb? Like I can just do that, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that really bad ADR we just recorded into somebody's iPhone doesn't sound terrible. This can go out to Amazon for their review link or whatever.
Yeah, and I will say that the philosophy on the Premiere team is that we want to give you enough of the tools that if you're doing an indie feature and you have to do it yourself, that you have the tools to do it, and you have the ability to jump to Audition or After Effects or Photoshop to like finesse it, but that you don't necessarily have to do it all yourself, that you can be working seamlessly with team members and other teams.
Yeah, like I love being able to sell a proof of concept, because in some ways that helps the director and production understand like, oh, okay, we can make this choice in the story because our VFX person will be able to sell this. Like, here's a crappy temp that I just did, but like someone with real skills in the other department.
You can see it. You can see the vision.
Like we're already 80% there, and this is just me in 5 minutes.
Yeah. It'll be fine. Someone more talented will take this over for me.
Okay, so Monica Daniel, hello.
Hey.
Asks, what assistant editing skills and tasks have helped you in honing your editing skills?
Being organized.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Every now and then I get asked to come in on an edit for a music video that has already been in process, and they are they are often very unorganized. And being an assistant, like going back to I think what we were talking about earlier is like this skill set and what gets you that first opportunity. I think, or how to set up your workflow. Like step 1 is be organized. Know where everything is. Don't just have a bin of whatever, or if you have a bin of whatever, know that that's a bin of whatever.
Your way around,
and just
whatever.
Ignore that thing. But like,
Hide it.
yeah, just being organized gets you like. I like to compare it to having a palette as a painter. I'm not a good painter, but like if I have string outs and I have selects and I have all of these things, and like going into an edit, I fly through the edit. Like a music video, I'll do a selects pass, and I'll spend 5 hours on the selects pass, and I'll spend 30 minutes on the edit. Because you have that palette to pull from.
Yeah.
And I think being an assistant like teaches you to be organized and diligent and like aware of everything.
I think it also like makes you appreciate your assistants even more.
Yeah.
Like
Do you ever feel guilty with your assistants?
Well,
No, because I'm so nice to them, and if they don't know how to do, no, but seriously, I invite people on the
Ernie's like, oh,
I'm like, I'll ask for a string out or something, and I'm like, oh God, that's gonna take so long. I'm so sorry.
yes,
Sorry.
yes, I do like to the point that if I go home and it's really late, and even though they're on overtime, I will text them like, please drive home safely, like please. I do feel very guilty, but like. I was very lucky that when I was assisting the editor, I was used to be an assistant. So he was very self-sufficient to the point that I got spoiled.
Yeah.
But then I hope I did a good job in transferring that, like because my editor himself would mark the VFX shots, and then he would mark when the VFX shots have changed or anything. Like he was very organized in that section, in that matter. That I would try to keep a good. I would try to keep my tracks clean. Like if things are muted, like they're muted purposely, don't delete those, but like everything stays in their channel. The VFX shots are marked properly. Like all those things I inherited. And also he was so laid back that I decided to be I hope that I was laid back. Like so I think those skills, and maybe that's not like actual editorial skills, but those are skills that are about the dynamic in your edit room, that those are good things to inherit as an assistant.
I'm gonna strongly agree with that, because I can always tell when I'm assisting for an editor that was an assistant themselves, and as an editor I really hope that I am that organized in my timeline. My timelines do tend to be cleaner, I think, because I do think of the assistant. Like, I'm guilty in advance. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stay organized.
Yes.
And all my plates will be on V1, and then my sound is like immaculate and, you know, tracked a certain way. And but I think too, the soft skills that you're mentioning and the dynamic in the room is so important. Like, being an assistant, when you become an editor, I think, value your assistant more, because you're like, yes, I deeply understand what I'm asking of you. So when I ask you to do such and such, and I know it's a lot of work, I'm not asking it lightly, and I can also tell you like how this fits into the larger workflow if you're interested in that, and I hope you are if you're assisting for me. And you know, so you communicate better, you have empathy, which like contributes to that good time vibe, and then like when everyone's having a good time and things are getting along, and when stuff is just working in your system and your workflow, you can have more fun in the edit. You can have more fun and more time for creativity. Absolutely. And you can truly help each other, like be better at each other's job, which gives you both more time to, you know, take a real lunch break and decompress, and then come back and have creative time and things like that. So.
First of all, I want to call out this person's name on Facebook. Frank Flo Disco asks a question that I'm going to pose to you, Ernie, because we talked about this previously. What has been your biggest challenge while transitioning from assistant to editor, and how did you overcome that challenge? And I'm thinking specifically of like getting really cool opportunities as an assistant.
It's like totally a first world problem. Is as an assistant, I kept getting to work with very talented, awesome, nice people on things I was proud of. And so it became this thing where it's like, okay, well, I'll just keep doing that. That's nice. That's fun. Why would I risk going to work on a show I don't like as an editor when I can do this? So that, I think, became a roadblock. But I think I mentioned this maybe on our call. What I've realized last year, as I've made this transition to editing more, is you're in the room and at the table at a way as an editor that you never are as an assist, or rarely are. 5% are as an assistant, where you're on the email from the network or the studio, you're talking daily with your director or your showrunner or your producer, and you're having those conversations that are outside of the manual editing and are more of the creative editing, the conversations like,
the strategy.
Is this character working? Is that hitting? Are we feeling that? Is this whatever? And so my encouragement through my own experience to everybody else is like, as soon as you can, like if your end goal is editing, if your end goal is that form of storytelling, do it. Even if it means doing it on the side, whatever, like do it, because that's going to open up parts of your craft and your passion that assisting just can't, because assisting is assisting. So yeah, that would be that.
Any other challenges that you guys can think of in that transition?
I think just the first time that you end up being put up in that position, sometimes, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or what, can hit. It's like, oh my gosh, I think I'm ready, but am I ready? Like, are they gonna see? Like, are they gonna?
They're gonna figure me out.
Are they gonna be able to tell? And like, it's just like, for me, every day it was waking up and being like, no, I got this. I got this. I know where I want to go. And sometimes, you do have to learn when to push for your ideas and when to not. And that's also something that you can only learn in the room with your particular director, and everyone is going to be different. and it's also a matter of trusting the process. And it sounds very cliche, but like it's trust the process. And that was a challenge, because as an assistant, it's really easy to just see how the movie's changing without seeing the process of making the movie change. And then when you're actually in the room dealing with like, let's make these changes is...
I have a really silly, fun analogy for this, I think.
Yes.
Maybe it just works for me, but growing up, my brother could do a flip on the wakeboard behind the boat, and I could never do that. Like, I could maybe do a little jump, right? But he could do a flip. And I always thought, like, that's the coolest thing ever. Like, look at Luke do this flip. And I've done a flip on, like, a trampoline, so I know what that feels like, but I don't know what the wakeboard flip feels like. And I think there's something about editing or any creative endeavor where, like, you're inside the flip. You're the one doing the flip, and that's going to always feel different than watching somebody do a flip.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of learn what that feels like to you and what works to you. And at the end of the day, I tell the people I work with this, like, at the end of the day, I can just do the Ernie version of it. Like, and that's all I have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what you're hired to do. That's why they hired you.
but
versus...
some projects, it may not work, right? They may want the plant version of it or whatever. You know, they want something else.
Right.
You know, but all I can do is my version of it to the best of my ability. And I think that's been my little secret for the imposter syndrome, because I get that all the time. But it's just realizing that it's like, this is going to feel different than what it looks like.
That's really good.
That's a good one.
I like it.
Cool. I'm going to leave now.
Okay, so with that, I want to talk about community, about the importance of community to an assistant editor, to an editor, which is, as we've talked about, a very isolating thing a lot of times. How important is finding a community, being active in a community?
Go for it.
I think if I didn't have community, I would not be here in my career. I simply just never would have gotten started in New York. And finding a community sometimes means you need to search for it, reach for it. If it's not there, you build it yourself by being nice to each other, being kind, you know, and showing each other how to do your flips and things like that, because it's a great analogy. But for me, what that meant was going back to my origin story, I turned a babysitting job into an apprenticeship for 4 summers and built a community of New York editorial folks. So when 19-year-old Meagan moved to New York City, knowing no one in New York City except for the people who were connected to that first job that I did for 4 summers, that community of people helped me. That was my way in. You know, I learned, like, hey, I'm not exactly ready to be an assistant editor yet. You gotta work that one sideways move job in the same level, which I know is something people talk about in moving to LA, you know, because everyone comes to LA with a lot of experience, you know, like I had 15 years experience when I moved here. You know, everyone has a very, very different path. But your path will always rely on community. All your jobs will, like you said, always be word of mouth, you know. And that community was important to me because early on, my community was all these advertising editors and you know, who were also doing TV shows. And that's how I moved from advertising to TV shows. And they were really nice to me, and they let me spend a tremendous amount of time in the room with them, just observing them, dealing with directors and creatives and stuff. And that community was really, really valuable. But outside of my immediate work, there wasn't like a larger post-community sense of camaraderie in New York. I had like my school, people I knew through school and people I knew through work. And they didn't always, you know, have a lot of then. It wasn't until like a few years after school that I worked with one of my classmates for the first time ever. And I think that's only happened twice in editorial that I can really think of. But here in LA, we built a nice community in LA and New York and London with the Blue Collar Post Collective, which is kind of geared around that idea of like, this is, you know, what your career path will be. This is what networking is. It's just, you know, finding the people that you work creatively well with and sticking with those people. Find your weirdo tribe and keep making cool stuff and like have fun in the room and, you know.
I want to add to that. It's also about building how that community perceives you from the beginning, like from film school. They told us first day, this is not about the networking that you're going to do with the alumni. This is about the networking you're going to do amongst yourself. Because 4 or 5 years from now, the people that are going to be giving you a job is the person who's sitting right next to you. So that in itself, I had just arrived to LA, and that just switched the mindset of, I'm not competing against my classmates. We're all working towards the same goal of becoming filmmakers. So we go back to the same thing of like, don't be a dick. Don't be a dick from films, like from the very beginning. As soon as this is gonna be your career, just follow, like be nice to everyone. You never know what's gonna happen. You're gonna graduate. Everyone's gonna go their separate ways and grow. And then they're gonna be like, oh, I remember that in school, you were great at this. So they will give you a call. And that's starting to happen to me, that 5 years after graduating, they're like, hey, you're doing great. I'm doing a movie. Want to read my script? And it's beautiful. It's beautiful that those seeds that you plant a long time ago, sometimes they may seem like they're not really growing, but they are. And the other thing is just giving back to the community. Like, that's something that I really like about Blue Collar, is that, like, that's how we met.
That's how we met.
Then, like, we were randomly hanging, and we were like, we should work together. And, like, you find people that you like working with that are talented as well, and that are like perseverant, like they're persevering in this industry. So
yeah, we met at a Blue Collar Post Collective meetup, and you came up to me and you were like, I love your work on Conan, and I was like, awesome. And then 2 years later I was like, hire me as your assistant, please.
I was like, please.
So you never know. I
was like, please come to me.
And she's a great boss. But that's like the nature of making things together with your friends. Ideally, it's just like the magic of film school. If you went to film school, you got that. If you didn't, you maybe had it with your friends, and that's why you ended up.
And it doesn't have to be film school.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't go to film school. I communications.
I didn't
could
really
be
go to
English
film school
major.
either, so yeah.
It doesn't really. Yeah.
But like, make stuff with your friends.
Yeah.
On the weekends, until you can do it for money, Monday through Friday. Like, just keep doing it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be remiss at this moment not to mention Norm Holland and his passing yesterday, just in terms of the importance of mentorship and giving back and being somebody that really tries to foster the community, because it will come back to you in spades. And Norm was obviously a big representative of that theory. So in that same vein, any links, groups, we can call out Blue Collar once again, that you would recommend for people? I know there's probably a lot of audience members who aren't in LA or New York or London, or maybe they're in the Midwest or in South America or wherever, places, resources that they could find more about editing or community of editing.
Well, we're going to talk about Norm. Norm was always telling us, like, be active on the communities, be active on Facebook. He actually he insisted that we all joined Blue Collar, and I was a lurker in Blue Collar for years. I don't know if you knew this. I was a lurker in Blue Collar for like 2 years until I went to one meetup.
We have a Facebook group. Blue Collar Post Collective is active in 3 cities worldwide, but we have a Facebook group that you can participate in from anywhere. And Norm told his students to join that group. And
the other thing that he would say was listen to podcasts. Like, no matter where you are, you can listen to a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcasts are going to be, there's so many out there, one of them being like the Optimize Yourself podcast. That's like some of the ones that I listen to the most. Going Postal is great. If you just want to have fun, like the Cutaways podcast. It's just so fun. But it's also gonna start follow people on Twitter. Like, at least that was a thing back in 2014. And like, I knew so many names just because I followed them on Twitter and their editors, and then I eventually started making the connections when I met you. I was like, oh, that so, and those are things that you can do from anywhere. And
I met
reading
Norm on
blogs.
Twitter.
Yeah.
I met Norm on
Yeah.
Twitter, and then he came to New York for Edit Fest, and I was like, oh my God, I carried your book for
Reading books.
for like a decade. I carried this book before before I could just Google stuff.
Yeah.
And I was starstruck, and he came to Edit Fest, and he met me and Kylie for the first time. Kylie Pena, the president of Blue Collar Post Collective. Norm kind of really knew how to find community
Yeah.
and stoke its fires. And he used to, whenever he moderated a panel, he moderated our first Blue Collar Post Collective panel that we threw in Los Angeles, and he eventually joined our board when we incorporated. And he's just amazing. But he used to moderate every panel with his Twitter in hand, and he would take questions via Twitter, and he would always tell you the tag, like when he did the Lean Forward moment at Edit Fest. And so, yeah, I lost the point of what I was saying. It just...
No,
No,
we're
good,
going to have
good
Norm.
resources.
Yes.
There's Lean Forward
Oh, yeah, but
moment.
he used to
There's
say that.
Edit
Join
Fest.
Twitter.
People can check out Edit Fest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like it's also, we're also connected because things aren't as big. Where am I going with
The
this?
internet's the great equalizer.
I do a lot of music videos. Music video is a very tight-knit community. We have, there's imvdb.com, which is the Internet Music Video Database. And you're able to just find who worked on stuff, right? And it like everybody has some sort of social media presence. You can start to see who's maybe receptive to starting a conversation or to anytime anybody emails me, I'm like, holy crap, somebody emailed me. Like,
Yeah.
what? That's silly. Nobody should email
Do
me.
you ever go like, how do you find my email?
Well, it's like, it's very plain. It's a very easy email.
But I bet you're really approachable. Like, I bet people
I
are
would
scared
love
to email
no,
people,
I would
but
love
you
to-
love getting email, right?
I would love,
Yeah.
like, as best as I can, I always try to email people back if they have a question about something. And I just, maybe I'm naive, but I believe that most people are that way.
No, and I
Because
think
a lot of people
especially in
had that
editing, like editors often get forgotten about. So anybody who reaches out and is like, "I love your work and you're such an inspiration," it's like, "Oh wow, like somebody okay, let's
Wow.
chat."
You're like, oh, thank you for noticing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
actually stayed after the credits.
Like I had people who, with my first gigs, my first jobs, who took a chance on me, and then I love to take a chance on people. And if people we had a really amazing post PA on Atlanta season 2, Jen, who was able to get the bump when I left because she was there and she was like taking initiative and willing to like learn how to do a turnover and try things and then doing stuff in her free time as well. And so I just think we've all kind of had a similar experience of struggle and heartache and like trying to make things work. And unless you're awful, like you want to see other people succeed, right?
Yeah,
like
Be the person that you needed when you were younger. Because
Totally.
I think about all those people who did me favors. Everyone who ever took a chance on me or like hired me when I had no skills or experience on paper yet, they take that chance. I think about those people and I'm like, thank you, because you believed in me and that helped me believe in myself. It also gave me a chance to just, literally do the work so that I could look good on paper.
you also need you need that community.
That validation.
You need that community of like fellow editors or assists that you can like bounce something to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I there's like 12 people in my G chat who are people I've either worked with or are friends with, and it's like, hey Ernie, this export's not working. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Or I can be like, hey, have you ever run into this? And just building that is so essential, I think.
Yeah.
Watch this. Can you watch this scene and tell me if it's garbage? Like,
Yes.
tell me if I'm crashing and burning. But yeah, the community is so essential. Like, I mean, filmmaking is the ultimate like collaborative art. Like, you can't do it all by yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the time has flown by.
Wow.
We are done. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you everybody on the live stream for joining. Stay tuned for more. We're going to be doing more and more of these, talking to editors, assistants, from everything music, video, television, feature film. So stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.